In the heart of the Orion League, a vast chamber stretched beneath shining crystal arches. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in their places. Each came from a different world, yet all shared the same thought: a new species had been discovered. The reports came from traders who had wandered into a small star system on the edge of known space. The planet was blue, rich with water and land, covered in storms and forests. It was home to humans. The traders described these beings as strange. They stood upright, spoke in many sounds, and carried emotions too easily. Their bodies were not armored like the great reptile clans, nor were they graceful like the winged races. Humans were soft compared to most. They had fragile bones, thin skin, and short lives compared to the elder species. The council listened and soon judged them as harmless. A voice rose from one corner of the chamber. Elder Rahl, a being older than most present, tapped his staff on the floor. His skin was pale and cracked, his eyes glowing faintly. He spoke slowly, his tone heavy. "Be cautious. Appearances are not truth. The humans may hold something we do not yet see." The chamber buzzed with whispers. Many laughed quietly. Why should the great Orion League fear such a small people? They ruled hundreds of systems, while humans had not even left their home star system fully. Another leader, tall and covered with shimmering scales, spoke with pride. "They will be like children in the dark. We shall teach them order. Their planet can be used, their kind can serve. Why waste time worrying?" Elder Rahl gave no answer, only shook his head. Meanwhile, across the stars, the first official meeting between humans and the Orion League began. A small human ship entered a neutral station. The humans wore simple suits and carried translators. They bowed and smiled, trying to show peace. The aliens studied them with cold eyes. The human leader introduced himself as Tamash. His voice was steady, his words chosen carefully. "We come with friendship. We wish to share knowledge, not conflict." Some of the alien leaders nodded politely. Others whispered to each other, thinking how weak these humans appeared. Their skin showed scars and marks. Their eyes revealed a mixture of fear and courage. Talks continued for days. Humans asked fair questions, offered simple trade, and spoke of cooperation. Yet behind closed doors, the council mocked them. They called humans a race of dreamers. They believed the humans had no power, no strength to resist if pushed. But not all thought this way. One small faction among the alien leaders grew uneasy. They noticed how quickly humans adapted. They learned new languages within days, understood complex machines faster than expected, and remembered every detail shared with them. Their eyes carried a strange fire, as if waiting for something more. On the final day of talks, Elder Rahl rose once again. His voice echoed through the hall. "Take care with this species. Their weakness may only be what we see on the surface. Beneath, they may hold something far greater. Do not provoke them. Do not treat them as lesser. If we are wrong, we may face a storm unlike any before." The council grew silent for a moment. Then a wave of laughter swept across the chamber. One leader spoke with pride. "Elder Rahl has grown fearful in his age. These humans cannot touch the power of the Orion League. We will shape them as we shaped many before. The galaxy belongs to those who are strong." The decision was made. Humans would be welcomed with smiles, but the council would keep them under close watch. They planned to guide trade in unfair ways and slowly press the humans into service. The warnings of Elder Rahl faded into the noise of pride and arrogance. Back aboard their ship, the humans prepared to leave. Tomasz looked out from the viewing glass at the endless stars. He felt both wonder and unease. He had seen the way the aliens watched them, the way they whispered among themselves. Still, he held on to hope. Perhaps this galaxy is ready for friendship, he said to his crew. But deep inside, he also carried another thought. If friendship failed, humans would have to stand for themselves. The ship turned and began its journey back to the blue world called Earth. Far behind, the alien council dismissed them as fragile and unworthy of fear. None of them knew the truth waiting to unfold. The first contact had been made, and with it, the seeds of a storm had been planted. Months passed after the first meeting. The humans returned to Earth and told their people of the great council in the stars. Many were filled with hope. They dreamed of new trade, new friends, and a future where Earth stood among the stars as an equal. But not everyone shared this dream. Far away, in the shining halls of the Orion League, plans were being made. The council had seen what they thought were weaknesses in the human race. They saw fragile bodies and short lives. To them, humans were a resource to be used, not partners to be respected. Quiet agreements were signed between powerful alien houses. They would force humans into trade deals that drained their worlds. They would keep them small while the League grew rich. The first signs of trouble began with trade. Human ships carried simple goods, minerals, food, and machines. They expected fair exchange, but instead, the League demanded more and gave less. The prices offered were insultingly low. When humans protested, the aliens smiled politely but refused to change. Tomasz, now an ambassador, returned to the council chamber. His voice was firm though respectful. If there is to be peace, there must also be fairness. We cannot agree to these terms. The chamber filled with murmurs. One scaled leader leaned forward, his eyes narrow. You will accept what is given. Humans should be honored to trade with us at all. Without the League, you are nothing. Tomasz's face hardened, but he did not raise his voice. Without respect, there can be no true friendship. The meeting ended in silence. Behind the walls of the chamber, anger grew. Some leaders demanded that humans be taught a lesson. Others reminded them of Elder Rahl's warning, but their words were pushed aside. Pride spoke louder than caution. Soon, a fleet of alien warships moved toward the outer edge of human space. They claimed it was a patrol, but everyone knew the truth. Their goal was to intimidate. On Earth, alarms rang across command stations. Human ships were smaller, fewer, and less advanced, yet they prepared to defend their colonies. Generals gathered in tense rooms, their eyes fixed on the maps of stars. We cannot match their numbers, one said. But we can outthink them. When the alien fleet arrived, they expected an easy victory. Their ships were larger, their weapons older but powerful. They sent a message across space. Submit to the Orion League. Hand over your colonies and resources. Resist, and you will be destroyed. For a moment, silence filled the human channels. Then Tomasz's voice came through, steady and calm. We will not submit. If you wish to test us, know that humans do not kneel. The war began. The first clash took place near a small mining colony on the edge of human space. The alien fleet moved in with confidence, expecting to crush the defenders in minutes. Yet the humans fought with a kind of unpredictability the galaxy had rarely seen. Their ships darted between asteroids, using the rocks as shields. Small squadrons split apart, then rejoined, striking like hunters in the dark. The aliens fired heavy blasts, destroying asteroids and breaking apart mines, but the humans used the chaos itself as cover. In one daring move, a human captain overloaded his own engines to blind the enemy with a flash of light, allowing his allies to strike from behind. The battle raged far longer than the council had expected. When the smoke cleared, both sides had lost ships. But the aliens had lost more. They had believed the humans would break quickly. Instead, they had met resistance unlike any they had seen from such a small species. Word of the battle spread through the League. Many were shocked. Some dismissed it as chance or luck. They told themselves it was only one battle. Yet whispers began to rise. The humans were learning fast. They were adapting with every fight. Back on Earth, the people mourned their dead, but their spirits did not fall. Instead, they grew stronger. Across the world, factories lit up with fire as more ships were built. Scientists worked day and night, turning wreckage from the battle into new designs. Soldiers trained harder, and civilians gave whatever they could to support the cause. In the council chamber, the mood was grim. Reports of losses stirred unease. A younger leader turned to Elder Rahl and spoke sharply. "You warned us, yet they are only humans. How can they stand against the League?" Elder Rahl's eyes glowed faintly as he answered, his voice calm but cold. "They stand because they must. You mistake weakness for fragility. You mistake endurance for surrender. This war will teach you the difference." But his words fell once more on deaf ears. The council doubled its efforts, preparing to send a larger fleet. They believed numbers would crush spirit. They still did not understand what they were facing. And so the first conflict between humans and the Orion League had begun. It was meant to be a lesson, but it became something far greater. For the first time, the galaxy began to glimpse the truth that humans, when pushed, were not fragile at all. They were dangerous. The first battle was supposed to be simple. The Orion League believed their strength could crush the humans in a single strike. Instead, the humans had stood firm, and their defiance shook the galaxy. Reports spread from system to system. Traders whispered of human ships moving like shadows between asteroids. Soldiers spoke of small fleets that fought with the fury of empires. The stories grew with each telling, and even those who had not seen the humans began to feel uneasy. In the council chamber, the leaders tried to calm themselves. They reminded each other that the League had ruled the stars for centuries. No young species could threaten their power. Yet fear was already seeping into their words. A commander with broad shoulders and burning eyes slammed his fist against the table. "We lost ships because our captains were careless. The humans only won by luck. Send more fleets, and they will fall." Another leader shook his head. "Luck does not repeat itself. The humans adapt. They do not fight with our methods. They create new ones each time. It is like facing a storm you cannot predict." Elder Rahl, silent through most of the debate, finally spoke. His voice was heavy with warning. "I told you before. Humans endure. They take every strike and rise again. Each defeat only teaches them. You believe them fragile, but that is your mistake. They are not fragile. They are unbroken." His words were met with silence. Few wanted to admit the truth, yet the thought lingered in their minds. Meanwhile, in human space, the news of the first victory spread like fire. Colonies that once feared the League now held hope. Men and women stood in long lines to join the defense. Engineers worked day and night, building ships from scraps. What the humans lacked in resources, they made up for with determination. In one hidden station, young recruits trained under harsh conditions. A veteran captain named Myra stood before them. Her voice carried both pride and warning. The League believes we are weak. They will come with more ships, more fire. But remember, the strength is not only in weapons. It is in will. It is in the courage to stand when others expect you to fall. Her words sank deep into the hearts of the recruits. They knew the battles ahead would not be easy, yet none turned away. The next clashes proved even more shocking to the League. Human fleets were still small, but they fought with cleverness. They hid in nebula clouds, where sensors failed. They tricked enemy ships into chasing false signals. They used old satellites and broken stations as traps. Every time the League thought they had crushed the humans struck back harder. One alien officer returned from battle with trembling hands. He spoke before the council, his voice shaking. They do not fear death as we do. They charge even when outnumbered. They fight even when the battle is lost. They are unlike any enemy we have faced. But many leaders refused to believe. They told themselves it was still only a matter of time. The League was vast, while the humans were few. Numbers, they believed, would decide the war. Yet cracks were forming. Soldiers whispered in the barracks. Commanders grew cautious. Some refused to face humans again, fearing their unpredictable strikes. A shadow of fear had entered the hearts of the League. On Earth, Tamash sat with his council of human leaders. His face was tired, yet his voice carried strength. We cannot stop now. Each victory, no matter how small, shows the galaxy who we are. They thought us weak, but we will prove them wrong. We will not only defend our homes. We will show them that humans do not break. The council agreed. They knew the cost would be high, but they also knew retreat was not an option. For every world lost, they would take 2 back. For every ship destroyed, 2 more would rise. Whispers reached the edges of the galaxy. Other races, smaller and weaker than the League, began to listen. They wondered if perhaps the humans could succeed where they never dared to fight. Quietly, some began to send information, maps, or supplies to human allies. The seeds of greater change were being planted. In the Orion League, fear grew stronger. Meetings that once rang with pride now carried unease. Leaders avoided the gaze of Elder Rahl, for his eyes seemed to carry the truth they did not wish to hear. The war was no longer a simple conflict. It was becoming a test of spirit. And while the League still believed in numbers and weapons, the humans believed in something deeper. They believed in endurance. The galaxy was beginning to learn this truth. Fear was spreading, not because humans had the largest fleets, but because they had something the galaxy did not understand. They refused to give up. And with every battle, that fear only grew. The war spread across the stars. Human colonies burned, yet they rose again. Alien fleets struck hard, yet they returned weaker than before. Every battle left the League shaken. The humans were not supposed to last this long. Inside the council chamber, voices grew louder and angrier. Some demanded more fleets, others demanded peace, but no one agreed. Pride chained them, and fear whispered in their minds. Elder Rahl watched in silence for a long time. His old eyes studied the faces around him. Finally, he rose and struck his staff against the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber, and the voices fell quiet. You still do not see, Rahl said, his voice heavy with warning. The humans are not like others we have faced. We thought them weak, but they are strong in ways we do not understand. If we continue to provoke them, they will not only fight us, they will break us. A younger leader scoffed. His armor glowed under the chamber lights, and his pride was as sharp as a blade. You speak as if they are gods. They are only flesh and blood. They bleed, they die. We have crushed greater enemies before. Rahl shook his head. You see only the surface. You think strength is measured in weapons and ships. But the humans carry something else. They endure pain as if it were fuel. They learn faster than any I have seen. Every wound we give them becomes their weapon tomorrow. If we are wise, we will stop now. Do not provoke humans further. It will cost us everything. The chamber was filled with whispers. Some leaders looked uneasy, remembering the reports of their soldiers who had fled from human battles. Others turned away, unwilling to admit fear. Pride once again drowned out wisdom. But not all ignored the warning. Far away, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a small faction of alien races gathered. They were not as powerful as the great houses of the League. Many had been forced to obey the Council for centuries. They had watched the humans fight, and they had seen what others refused to see. One of their leaders, a winged being with silver feathers, stood before the gathering. We have heard the words of Elder Rahl. We have seen the fire of humans. If the League continues this war, the galaxy will pay the price. We must act. We must warn others before it is too late. The gathering agreed. Messages were prepared and sent across hidden channels. The words were simple but powerful. Do not provoke humans. They are more dangerous than they appear. If you push them, they will rise beyond all limits. If you strike them, they will strike back harder. Be cautious, or face a storm that cannot be stopped. These warnings spread slowly at first, carried by traders and smugglers. Some laughed when they heard the message. How could a small, young race frighten the great Orion League? But others listened closely. They remembered human victories, and they began to wonder if the message was true. On Earth, Tomash received one of these secret warnings. He read the words and felt both fear and pride. He gathered his closest advisors and spoke. Even our enemies begin to see it. They know what we are capable of. But the League will not listen. They will strike harder, and we must be ready. Factories burned with light as more ships were built. Families sent their children to training camps, not with tears but with determination. Across human space, the warning became a call. They knew the galaxy was watching, and they would prove they deserved respect. The Orion League, however, refused to change. Their leaders dismissed the warnings as weakness. They called the factions who sent them traitors. They laughed at the idea of humans becoming a true threat. Yet in the shadows of their laughter, fear grew. Soldiers whispered the warning among themselves before battles. Captains hesitated when orders came to strike human colonies. Even within the League, doubt spread like cracks in a wall. Elder Rahl stood once more before the council. His voice was stronger than his body. This is the last time I speak. You believe victory is certain, but you are blind. The warnings have spread because they are true. If you do not listen now, the truth will come. But it will come too late. The leaders turned away from him, their pride unbroken. Plans were already in motion for a larger war. The warning had been given, yet the powerful refused to hear it. In the quiet of his chamber, Rahl whispered to himself, his voice filled with sorrow. I have seen storms before. But none like this. When it breaks, no wall will stand. And so the galaxy carried the warning, but only a few believed. Most still thought humans could be bent, broken, and ruled. They did not yet understand. The storm was still rising, and soon the truth would strike. The warnings had spread across the galaxy, yet the Orion League ignored them. Pride was heavier than reason, and arrogance blinded their eyes. They believed their numbers and their fleets could crush any resistance. They thought the humans were only surviving by chance. So the League made its decision. A full war was declared. Dozens of fleets were called from every corner of their empire. Thousands of ships gathered, forming an armada so vast that even the stars seemed hidden behind their hulls. The leaders stood tall, believing this display of power would finally end human defiance. When the news reached Earth, silence fell across the world. Screens showed the size of the armada, and even the bravest felt fear. Mothers and fathers looked at their children and wondered if there would be a future for them. Yet despite the fear, no one called for surrender. Instead, the people grew more determined. Tamash stood before the human council. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with resolve. The League believes this will be the end of us. They see only our weakness. But we know the truth. We are not finished. We will not bow. If they strike at us with all their strength, then we must rise with all our spirit. Factories thundered louder than ever. Every workshop became part of the war effort. Children drew pictures of ships and soldiers, and their parents hung them on walls as symbols of hope. Across the colonies, hidden bases were built deep under rock and ice. Humans prepared not only to fight in space but to resist on every world, even if the skies above burned. When the Armada came, it struck like a storm. Human colonies near the edges of space were attacked first. Entire cities were destroyed in minutes. Millions were forced to flee underground shelters. The sky was filled with fire. The League thought the humans would finally bend. But instead of breaking, the humans adapted. In one mining colony, survivors turned tunnels into fortresses. They set traps in the dark, forcing alien soldiers into narrow spaces where numbers meant nothing. In another colony, engineers transformed broken machines into weapons, striking the invaders with tools meant for farming. Everywhere the League struck, resistance rose. Humans fought with everything they had, even when hope seemed lost. The council commanders grew frustrated. They had destroyed cities, yet the humans refused to surrender. They had burned colonies, yet the humans fought from the ruins. The turning point came in the Battle of Vega Outpost. The League sent 3 fleets to crush the small human station. It was supposed to be quick, but the defenders had prepared carefully. They hid mines among the asteroids, disguised them as rocks, and waited until the fleets entered. When the trap was sprung, explosions tore through the alien lines. Human ships, fewer and weaker, struck from the shadows. They weaved between asteroids, turning the field itself into their weapon. When the battle ended, the League had lost nearly half its ships. The survivors fled, carrying the shame of defeat. The humans had proven that even against impossible odds, they could win. Word spread faster than light. The galaxy began to whisper again. The warning had been true. The humans were not a fragile race. They were something far more dangerous. Inside the Orion Council chamber, fear finally touched even the proudest leaders. Reports of defeat arrived daily. Commanders spoke of soldiers refusing to fight humans again. Entire fleets needed rebuilding. Yet still the council refused to admit the truth. Instead, they doubled their orders, demanding more fleets, more fire, more war. Elder Rahl stood in silence, his face filled with sorrow. He had warned them many times, but pride had deafened their ears. Now the storm he had feared was breaking across the galaxy. In human space, the people stood united. For every city lost, a new base rose. For every ship destroyed, a new design was tested. Scientists turned wreckage from battles into weapons the League had never seen. Generals studied every move the enemy made and answered with new strategies. The League had made its great mistake. They had believed humans could be broken by force. But force only hardened them. Pain only made them stronger. The more they suffered, the more dangerous they became. The galaxy began to understand this truth, but for the League it was too late. They had chosen war when peace was still possible. They had unleashed a storm they could no longer control. And in the hearts of humans, a fire had been lit. It was no longer only about survival. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity would never kneel. The great mistake of the Orion League had been made, and its cost was only beginning to show. The war had raged for years. Human space had been burned, colonies had fallen, and fleets had been shattered. Yet the humans did not stop. Every defeat had become a lesson. Every loss had made them stronger. The League had underestimated them, and now the tide was beginning to turn. In the Orion League, commanders no longer spoke with confidence. Ships that once moved with certainty now hesitated. Reports from the front lines were grim. Smaller human fleets were defeating larger alien forces with clever tactics, courage, and teamwork that the League could not predict. One officer, trembling as he reported to the council, said, "We have surrounded a human colony with 10 fleets. We expected victory. We lost 6 of our own fleets. They knew our movements before we acted. They fought like a storm we cannot stop." The council fell silent. Pride had given way to fear. For the first time, many realized Elder Ral's warnings had been true. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous, not because of size or technology, but because of their will. In the stars near Vega Prime, human ships moved with precision. Captain Myro led a squadron through a dense asteroid field. Her fleet was smaller, and the enemy outnumbered them 5-1. Yet she smiled. "Remember, we fight smart, not only hard. Use the field. Use each other. We cannot lose hope." Her pilots nodded. They darted between asteroids, splitting into small groups, confusing the alien sensors. The enemy fired blindly, destroying parts of the rocks but never reaching the hidden human ships. Then, in a coordinated strike, the humans attacked the fleets from behind. Ships crashed and burned as humans used cunning rather than force. Across the galaxy, other battles followed the same pattern. Humans adapted faster than the League could react. Alien officers reported that human strategies were unlike anything they had ever encountered. They anticipated moves, used terrain in space, and fought with unity and courage that could not be measured. Back on Earth, Tomash watched the news from the front lines. His face was tired, but his eyes shone with pride. He met with human generals and scientists. "Every time they strike, we learn. Every time we lose, we adapt. The tide is turning. Soon, the League will see that humans are not to be underestimated." The human colonies celebrated small victories, but they did not become careless. Engineers built new ships in secret bays. Soldiers trained in hidden bases. Civilians prepared food, medicine, and supplies. Humanity was becoming stronger with every challenge. Inside the Orion League, doubt and fear spread like wildfire. Some leaders began to argue among themselves. One said, "We underestimated them. We have made a mistake. We cannot continue like this. Another replied sharply, we cannot stop now. Retreat would be shameful. We must crush them before they grow stronger. Elder Rahl watched quietly, knowing neither pride nor fear alone could save the League. He had warned them, but few had listened. The humans had turned every strike against them into an opportunity. Every failure of the League had strengthened human resolve. The turning tide was most visible during the Battle of Andrus Cluster. The League sent its largest fleet yet, hoping to end the war with a decisive blow. Hundreds of ships surrounded the human positions. They expected humans to fight bravely but eventually surrender. Instead, the humans waited in ambush. They had studied the enemy for months, learning patterns, weaknesses, and blind spots. When the League fleets advanced, humans struck with precision. Hidden torpedoes destroyed command ships. Small strike teams disabled weapons and engines on larger vessels. In hours, the League fleet was shattered. The humans lost some ships, but the League suffered far greater losses. The message was clear across the galaxy: the humans could not be beaten by force alone. They had endurance, strategy, and courage unmatched in the galaxy. In the council chamber, the leaders struggled to speak. They realized that the humans were no longer a small, weak species. They were survivors, learners, and warriors. Their spirit could not be broken. Elder Rahl finally spoke, his voice calm but heavy. The tide has turned. What you dismissed as weakness is now your greatest threat. Humans rise with every strike. They endure with every loss. You must respect them, or you will fall. Some leaders began to whisper apologies, others argued. Pride still kept many from admitting the truth openly, but the fear was now undeniable. Back on Earth, Captain Myra and her squadron returned to base. Soldiers and civilians greeted them with cheers. Ships had been repaired and rebuilt. People had survived attacks and adapted. Humanity had survived the worst the galaxy could throw at them, and now the path of the war was changing. The turning tide was no longer a hope or a dream. It was a reality. The humans were rising, stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. The Orion League had made its mistake. They had underestimated the humans. And now, the galaxy was learning the truth. The war had lasted for many cycles of the stars. Human colonies had been destroyed and rebuilt, fleets had been shattered and reforged, yet the humans never gave up. Their courage and determination had changed the course of the galaxy. The Orion League, once proud and unshakable, now lay fractured. Whole fleets had been destroyed. Commanders who had once laughed at the humans now trembled at their name. Ships fled from battle, fearing the unpredictable fury of a species they had thought weak. Inside the council chamber, Elder Rahl stood in silence. He had warned them, but pride and arrogance had blinded the leaders. Now, the truth was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their endurance, their intelligence, and their spirit had proven stronger than any fleet, any weapon, and any plan the League could muster. One leader, his scales dulled and cracked from stress, spoke quietly. We ignored the warnings. We thought we could bend them, break them, and rule them. We were wrong. They are more than we imagined. Another nodded, eyes wide with fear. We believed only in numbers, in strength of fleets. But they have something no one else has: unity, courage, and the will to rise no matter what. The humans had not only defended themselves but had begun to reclaim lost systems. Each victory strengthened their resolve. Colonies that had once burned were now thriving again, and their fleets moved through space with speed and precision unmatched by the League. Captain Myro led a squadron through the Vegas system, coordinating attacks with other human fleets. Every strike was calculated. Every move anticipated the enemy. She smiled at her pilots. We have faced everything they could throw at us. Now we show them what humans can truly do when we fight together. Her squadron cheered, their spirits high. The humans had learned not only to survive but to thrive. Even against overwhelming odds, they had become a force that could not be ignored. Across the galaxy, smaller races that had watched in fear began to send messages to humans. They offered supplies, information, and safe passage. They had seen the strength of humanity and knew the galaxy's balance was shifting. Some of them whispered that the humans might become protectors, not conquerors. Back in the Orion League, leaders were forced to retreat from several key systems. Ships that had once carried pride now carried fear. Entire regions that had been under League control were slipping away, retaken by humans who refused to yield. Elder Rahl addressed the remaining council members. The warnings were clear. You could have chosen peace. You could have respected them. Instead, you pushed them, provoked them, and now the truth is before you. Humans are not fragile. They cannot be controlled by fear or force. They rise beyond all expectations. The council fell silent, unable to respond. Their arrogance had been their undoing. Every fleet lost, every system reclaimed by humans, reminded them that the warnings had been true all along. On Earth, Tamash stood on a viewing platform, looking at the stars. He thought of every battle, every loss, and every victory. He spoke to the council of human leaders. We fought not just for survival but for respect. We showed the galaxy that humans will not be broken. Our spirit is stronger than any weapon they could use against us. Every person listening understood the truth. Humans were no longer a minor species. They had risen to a place of power, not because they had the largest fleets, but because they had the courage to endure, to learn, and to fight for what was right. The Orion League's great cities now stood empty in places. Whole fleets drifted in orbit, disabled and abandoned. The pride that once carried them had been replaced by fear and regret. They had ignored the warnings, believing humans could be bent to their will. Now the galaxy remembered Elder Rahl's words. Do not provoke humans. And yet, for the League, it was too late. The humans had proven their strength. Their endurance, unity, and spirit had become a force the galaxy could not deny. The humans did not celebrate revenge. They celebrated survival, unity, and the knowledge that their courage had changed the course of history. Across their colonies, people worked together to rebuild and prepare for a new future. The war had shown the galaxy what humans could achieve when they refused to surrender. In the quiet of space, Elder Rahl looked at the stars. He whispered, not to the council, but to himself. They cried out to the galaxy, and still most did not listen. The truth came too late for the League, but it came. Humanity has risen. Their time has come. The galaxy would never be the same. Humans had proven that they were not weak. They were survivors, warriors, and leaders. They had faced a storm of fire and fleets and emerged stronger. The Orion League had learned a lesson too late, but the humans would remember it forever. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as the humans looked ahead. The war had ended, but their journey had only just begun.